He shoved the injured man onto the emergency room floor like a piece of garbage. The leader of the armed group, tall and cold-eyed, pressed the barrel of his rifle against the throat of a trembling orderly and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Nobody moves, nobody calls anyone, and nobody plays hero or I start choosing who dies." The fluorescent lights buzzed above a room full of frozen people. Doctors, nurses, patients mid-treatment, all of them silent, all of them terrified. The wounded man on the floor gurgled and reached out a shaking hand bleeding from a wound no one was moving to treat. And in the back of that room, a quiet woman in plain blue scrubs set down her clipboard very slowly and looked at the man dying on the floor. If this story moves something in you, subscribe to our channel right now. Follow along until the very end and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Anna Smith had been a float nurse at Metropolitan General for 11 months, 2 weeks and 4 days. Not that she was counting. Floating meant she never stayed long enough in any one department to become part of the furniture. Pediatrics 1 week, cardiac recovery the next, the ER the week after that. She preferred it that way. Roots were a liability. Familiarity was a liability. The moment people started to really see you, the moment they started asking questions that went past, "How was your weekend?" things got complicated. Anna had spent the better part of 3 years making sure things did not get complicated. She was not unfriendly. That would have drawn attention too. She smiled at the right moments, remembered which attending liked their charts, alphabetized, and which one didn't care, as long as the vitals were logged, brought coffee to the night shift nurses when she saw them flagging around 2 in the morning. She was by every observable measure a perfectly pleasant, perfectly ordinary woman doing a perfectly ordinary job. The kind of person your eyes slid right past. That was the point. The ER on a Tuesday afternoon in November was not exactly quiet. The ER was never exactly quiet, but it had the particular texture of a manageable chaos. A man with a broken wrist from a fall off a ladder sat arguing with his wife about whether he should have called someone to help him instead of doing it himself. A teenage girl with a migraine lay with a cool cloth over her eyes, her mother rubbing her hand. 2 paramedics were handing off a diabetic episode to the on-duty resident, Dr. Marcus Webb, who was 29 years old, brilliant, and chronically underslept in a way that had started to show in the corners of his eyes. Anna was restocking a supply cart near Bay 4 when she heard the doors. Not the automatic sliding doors that opened and closed every few minutes for walk-ins. The double doors on the ambulance bay. They came open hard the way they did when someone was moving fast and not worried about being gentle. And the sound that came through them was wrong. It was the sound of boots, too many boots, too coordinated, too deliberate, and then a voice sharp and controlled calling out, "Clear the floor, clear it now." Anna did not turn around immediately. She finished placing the gauze packs on the shelf in front of her. She did it slowly and carefully, the way you might if you were trying to hear exactly what was behind you without appearing to listen. Dr. Webb said, "What is hey? You can't bring weapons in here." And then there was a sound Anna recognized from a place she had spent years trying to put behind glass. It was the sound of a rifle being readied, a short mechanical click that carried meaning no words could match. "I said clear the floor," the voice said again, quieter now, which made it worse. Anna turned. There were 4 of them. The one who had spoken was the one she immediately categorized as the leader, not because of his size, though he was tall, but because of the way the others angled themselves around him, the way their eyes checked his position even as they covered the room. He had the look of a man who had spent time in places where looking relaxed was itself a skill you developed under pressure. Late 30s, maybe 40. Dark clothing, no insignia. The kind of deliberate blankness that told you someone had worked hard to be unidentifiable. In the arms of 2 of the other men was a 4th figure, a man barely conscious, his shirt soaked through on the left side. The wound was below the rib cage. He was breathing in short, shallow pulls, the way the body does when it is working very hard to keep doing what it was built to do and starting to lose the argument. They lowered him to the floor of the ER bay. The leader swept his gaze around the room. Every doctor, every nurse, every patient who could see what was happening went still in that particular way. The sudden animal stillness that the body produces when it understands, without being told, that something has shifted and the old rules no longer apply. "He needs treatment," the leader said. "Someone is going to treat him right now, or I am going to start making decisions about who in this room is no longer necessary." Nobody moved. Dr. Webb had backed up against the nurse's station, his hands half raised his face, doing something complicated. He was not a coward. Anna had worked alongside him enough to know that. But there is a difference between courage in the abstract and courage at gunpoint, and the ER had not been part of Marcus Webb's residency training. We listen, we need to understand what we're dealing with here before. You're dealing with a man bleeding out, the leader said. That is all you need to understand. Who is the senior doctor on this floor? Silence. I'm going to ask one more time. Senior doctor. Now. Webb straightened. I'm the attending on shift. His voice only broke on the last word slightly, but I need to assess then assess. Webb moved toward the man on the floor and crouched. He pulled on a glove, pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck, tilted his head. Anna watched Webb's face change. She knew that face. It was the face of someone who had just looked at a math problem and realized they did not have the right tools to solve it. He needs surgery, Webb said. I'm a general practitioner. I can stabilize to a point, but this is... He looked up at the leader. We need a trauma surgeon. I can't. Then you are useless, the leader said, and the way he said it made 2 nurses near the window take small involuntary steps backward. Anna had been standing very still beside the supply cart for the last 4 minutes. She had been running through everything she was looking at. The wound entry pointed angle, the color of the blood at the bandage someone had pressed to it. Before they got here, the man's skin tone, the tension in his jaw, even unconscious. She had been cataloging the room. 4 armed men, leader at center, 2 flanking the main doors, 1 near the ambulance bay. No clear lines of communication between them, which meant they were not using earpieces, a small detail, but a detail. The other patients in the room, the staff, 7 nurses, 2 residents, 1 attending, 3 orderlies. The crash cart was at bay 2. The trauma bay was 12 feet behind the leader's left shoulder. She picked up the supply cart and rolled it forward. Excuse me, she said. Everyone looked at her. The leader turned. His eyes found her, the small woman in plain blue scrubs, the one who looked like she'd been restocking gauze, and he did the same thing everyone always did. He looked at her and saw exactly what she wanted him to see. Ma'am, I need you to. He's losing blood volume faster than your timeline is going to allow, Anna said, not to the leader. She was already crouching beside the man on the floor, pressing 2 fingers to the side of his neck, with her free hand and pulling back the soaked dressing with her other to look at the wound. You've got the entry site here. The angle of this suggests the projectile went through the lower left quadrant and most likely nicked the descending colon, could have caught a section of the mesentery depending on trajectory. He's been like this, how long? She directed the question at the leader without looking up. A pause. 40 minutes. Okay. She stood up. Okay, I need the trauma bay. Dr. Webb, I need a general surgery tray, and I need it in 3 minutes. I need 2 units of O-negative, a pressure bag, and someone who can run an IV line without being asked twice. She looked at the leader directly for the first time. Your man is going to die in the next 8 to 12 minutes if we do not move him right now. That is not a negotiating position. That is physiology. Nobody moved for a beat that lasted slightly too long. Webb said very quietly, Anna. Trauma bay, she said again, and she reached down and got her hands under the injured man's arms and began moving him herself. That broke the spell. 2 orderlies stepped forward. A nurse grabbed the far end of the gurney that had been standing unused at the edge of bay 3. The group moved, and the armed men moved with them, and Anna was already at the trauma bay doors before the leader could recalibrate whatever he had expected to happen when he walked through those ambulance bay doors. He caught up with her in 2 strides and put a hand on her arm. Not rough, but firm. Who are you, he said. The person trying to keep your friend alive, Anna said. Let go of my arm. He let go. Inside the trauma bay, it was a different world. The urgency that had paralyzed the ER floor outside became fuel in here. Webb appeared with the surgery tray, a nurse named Danny who had worked trauma for 6 years and had the reflexes to prove it had 2 lines running before anyone asked. The pressure bag was up. Anna was already gloved and at the man's side, her voice low and even, and absolutely certain as she called for what she needed before she needed it. Danny passed instruments without being asked twice. She looked at Anna once in the middle of a move that required a precision that did not belong in a float nurse's hands, and she opened her mouth and then she closed it again. Webb was watching from the left side of the table. He had stopped trying to lead the procedure 3 minutes in, not because anyone had pushed him out, but because he had watched Anna make 3 successive decisions that he, with his training and his years, would have taken 5 minutes each to arrive at, and she had made them in seconds, and they had been exactly right. He said quietly to no one in particular, "What is she doing?" It wasn't a question. The leader had posted himself at the trauma bay door. He was watching Anna's hands. There was something happening in his face that had not been there in the ER, a careful, focused quality, like a man who has seen something he was not expecting and is trying to fit it into a framework that is refusing to accommodate it. He watched her work for 6 minutes. Then he said in a voice that came from somewhere very particular, "Spectre." Anna's hands did not stop. She was holding a retractor with her left hand and applying pressure to a vessel with her right, and neither hand paused for a fraction of a second. But the rest of her body did something, the smallest thing, the kind of thing you would not notice unless you were looking for exactly that. Danny noticed. Webb noticed. The leader stepped closer to the table. "Spectre," he said again, "I know it's you." "I don't know what you're talking about," Anna said. Her voice was perfectly flat. Her hands kept moving. "I was in Kandahar in 2019, he said. "The forward operating base march. We lost 4 men and a combat surgeon pulled 2 more out of a burning vehicle and operated on them in the field without a table or a light source." He paused. "I was one of the 2. The room had gone very quiet. Danny stood with an instrument in her hand, not moving. Webb had stopped breathing in any noticeable way. Her call sign was Spectre, the leader said to no one in particular, and everyone at once. Delta Force attached, best combat surgeon any of us had ever seen work under fire. She walked away from all of it after the mission. Nobody knew where she went. Nobody was supposed to find her. Anna's voice, when she finally spoke, was the voice of someone who has run a very long time and has just heard the sound of footsteps catch up. "I need suction," she said. Danny provided suction. The surgery continued, but the room was different now. It was the same room with the same people and the same fluorescent lights and the same instruments and the same bleeding man on the table, and it was completely different from what it had been 5 minutes ago, and everyone in it knew it. Webb found his voice. "Anna?" He waited. She didn't look at him. "Anna, is any of what he just said?" "Clamp," she said. He handed her the clamp. Outside the trauma bay, through the narrow window in the door, other nurses and the remaining orderlies and 2 residents who had no business being in the hall were all standing there watching. The word had moved fast, the way things move in hospitals, through looks and half sentences and the body language of someone who just heard something that doesn't make sense and is trying to make it make sense. The ER floor was still locked down. The other 2 armed men were still at the main doors. A woman with chest pain in Baywood was being quietly manually attended to by a nurse who was doing her job with the particular focused calm of someone who has decided that doing her job is the only thing she can control right now. Inside the trauma bay, Anna finished the procedure. She stood back. She stripped off her gloves. She looked at the monitor reading, then at Danny, then at the man on the table who was alive when he should not have been, and she said, "Keep him on the pressure bag for another 20 minutes and watch the CATs. If they drop below 92, page me." She said it automatically, the kind of instruction that lives in muscle memory. Danny said, "Page you," not a question. An echo. Anna turned to face the leader. He was standing with his arms at his sides. The rifle was still in his hand, but it was pointed at the floor and had been for the last 15 minutes, which was something Anna had noted and filed and was now acknowledging internally for the first time. "You got what you came for," she said. "He's stable. He'll need monitoring." "We need to talk," the leader said. "No," Anna said. "We don't." "Spectre." "My name," she said, quiet and precise, "is Anna Smith. I'm a nurse at this hospital. I do not know you. I do not know that name. And I need you to take your men and leave this building before the police, who have certainly been called by now, regardless of whatever you told my colleagues, arrive and make the rest of this day significantly worse for everyone." He studied her. She let him study her. She had spent 3 years getting very good at being looked at and revealing nothing. "They're coming for you," he said. "The people who sent us, they're not after him." He tilted his head toward the man on the table. "He was a vehicle. They're after you. Someone found the records. Someone knows where Spectre landed." Anna held his gaze. I don't know what you're talking about, she said for the third time. But her voice had changed. It was the smallest thing, the kind of thing you would not notice unless you had spent time in places where noticing small things was how you stayed alive. The leader noticed. He reached into his vest and pulled out a folded piece of paper and set it on the edge of the supply table beside the door. He did not say anything else. He turned and the door opened and he walked back into the ER floor, and 2 minutes later, the sound of boots moved toward the ambulance bay, and then the bay doors opened and then they were gone. Webb appeared in the doorway. He looked at the paper on the table. He looked at Anna. Tell me, he said, that none of what just happened. Anna picked up the paper. She unfolded it. She looked at what was on it for 4 seconds. Then she folded it again and put it in the pocket of her scrubs. We need to check on the patients, she said. All of them. Start with the chest pain in Bay 1 and work your way down. Anna. Marcus? She looked at him directly, which she rarely did, and for a moment he saw something in her face that he did not have a name for. Not fear, not exactly, but something older than fear. Something worn in and load-bearing. Please, he stepped aside. She walked past him back into the ER. The orderly, who had been held at gunpoint, was sitting on a chair near the nurse's station, drinking water from a paper cup and staring at nothing. The nurse who had held down the fort in Bay 1 during the entire episode was updating a chart with the focused efficiency of someone who processes the incomprehensible by documenting things that are comprehensible. Anna stopped at the central station and picked up the chart she had set down when the boots first came through the doors. She checked the notation. She made a correction. She moved to Bay 2. Danny caught up with her between Bay 2 and Bay 3. I'm not going to pretend I'm not asking this, Danny said, because I am absolutely asking this. She kept her voice low. The two of them were moving together, walking the way colleagues walk when they have things to say that are not for public consumption. That man called you Spectre. He said Delta Force. He said combat surgeon. He said Kandahar. She paused. You sewed that man up like you have been doing it since before I was born, and I have been in this ER for 6 years, and I have watched trauma surgeons who trained for a decade do worse. Anna moved to the next bay. I'm a float nurse, she said. I've picked up skills at a lot of different departments. Danny stopped walking. Anna stopped too. She did not turn around immediately. She stood for a moment with her back to Danny and her face to the bay curtain, and she was very still in the way that someone is still when they are not resting, but bracing. He left something on the table, Danny said, quieter now. I didn't read it. I want you to know that. I didn't read it. But I saw it, and whatever it was, you put it in your pocket, and you walked out here, and you picked up a chart, and I need to know. Her voice dropped further. Are we in danger? Right now, still. Is there something coming that we should be preparing for? Anna turned around. Danny was 34 years old and had the particular kind of toughness that 6 years of trauma nursing builds, not hardness, but density. A weight to her that came from having absorbed a great deal and kept showing up anyway. She was looking at Anna with something that was not panic and was not doubt. It was something more like the look of someone who has decided they are going to stay and face what is coming, and they just want to know what direction it is coming from. Anna said yes. Danny nodded. Very slowly, very deliberately, the way someone nods when they already knew the answer and needed to hear it said out loud. What do I do? Danny asked. Right now, Anna looked down the length of the ER floor. You help me make sure every patient on this floor is stable and documented. You make sure the staff who need to debrief get to debrief. You do your job. She met Danny's eyes. Can you do that? I have been doing that for the last 45 minutes, Danny said. Yes. The next 3 hours were the specific kind of exhausting that comes not from physical effort, but from sustained high-level function under a weight that has no name and no endpoint. The police came, then the FBI, then 2 men in suits who did not identify themselves as anything in particular and who asked their questions in the careful, practiced way of people who are professionally uninterested in you knowing who they are. Anna answered every question precisely. She had treated a gunshot victim under duress. She had performed a stabilizing procedure based on her nursing training. She did not know the men who had brought the patient in. She had never seen any of them before. The man in the left suit looked at her for a very long time after she said that. She looked back at him without blinking. He wrote something in his notepad. He thanked her. They left. Webb found her in the break room at 6:43 in the evening, sitting with a cup of coffee. She had not drunk the paper from her pocket unfolded on the table in front of her. He looked at the paper. He could see it was a photograph, small, grainy, the kind of image that had been taken from a distance and enhanced until the resolution started to fail. He could make out a figure in the image, a woman, moving through what looked like a crowd. He sat down across from her. "I'm not going to pretend I know what's happening," he said. "Good," Anna said, "because I'm still working that out myself. That man in there," he stopped, "the one we just spent 2 hours keeping alive, he's stable. He's going to make it." He folded his hands on the table. "Whatever you did, whoever taught you to do it, wherever you learned it, he's alive because you were standing next to a supply cart this afternoon and not somewhere else." Anna looked at the photograph. "I've been not somewhere else for 3 years, she said, very quietly, almost to herself. Webb said nothing. He seemed to understand that there were things being worked through in the silence that he did not need to help with. "They know where I am," Anna said finally, "which means in the next—" She checked the clock on the wall. "Probably 12 to 18 hours, somebody with a great deal of institutional authority is going to walk through those doors with a file that has my name on it, my real name. And everything that I've spent 3 years building into something that looked like an ordinary life is going to be done." Webb sat with that. "What's your real name?" he asked. She looked at him. "Anna Smith," she said. He absorbed that. "And the other thing, the call sign." She picked up the coffee and finally took a drink of it, even though it was cold. "Something I used to be," she said. She refolded the photograph. She put it back in her pocket. She stood up, pushed in her chair, and picked up the chart she had brought in with her because, even in the middle of the world reorganizing itself around her, the chest pain patient in Bay 1 needed their notes updated before the shift changed. She walked back out to the floor, and in the pocket of her blue scrubs, the photograph pressed against her side, and on it, in handwriting she did not recognize, were 4 words below the image. "They already know, Spectre." The night shift came in the way it always did, quietly, with the particular weariness of people who had already heard the broad version of what happened and were now trying to reconcile it with the woman they thought they knew. Anna watched them come in through the double doors from her position at the central station, and she read every face the same way she had always read faces, the way you learn to read them when your life has depended on doing it accurately. And what she read was this: the story had already moved faster than she had. Nurse Patrice, night charge, 50s, 22 years in the ER, walked straight to Anna without stopping to put down her bag. She said, "Tell me you're all right." "I'm all right," Anna said. Patrice looked at her for 3 full seconds. "You sure?" "I'm sure." Patrice set her bag down on the counter and put both hands flat on the surface and kept looking at Anna with the expression of a woman who has been in emergency medicine long enough to know what people look like when they are saying the true thing and what they look like when they are saying the useful thing. "The FBI agents. The 2 men after. What did you tell them? The truth? Which version of the truth?" Anna met her eyes. "The one that keeps everyone in this building safe." Patrice was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Marcus Webb has been sitting in his car in the parking structure for the last 40 minutes. He came out here twice, turned around, went back. I saw him on the camera." She tilted her head. "He's not going home." Anna said nothing. "Whatever happened in that trauma bay," Patrice said lower now, so that only Anna could hear. "I've been doing this long enough to know that what you did in there was not standard nursing. I've seen nurses with 30 years on me freeze in situations half as bad as what you walked into today." She paused. "I don't need you to tell me anything you don't want to tell me. But I need to know if I should be worried about tomorrow morning." "Yes," Anna said for the second time that evening. Patrice absorbed that the same way Danny had, with a stillness that was not the stillness of fear, but of preparation. She nodded once. She picked up her bag and went to her station and began the handoff process. And she did not bring it up again, and Anna understood that this was its own kind of loyalty, the kind that doesn't ask questions because it has already decided it is staying. Anna clocked out at 7:12. She did not go to her car. She walked to the stairwell at the east end of the building and sat down on the 3rd step from the bottom and took the photograph out of her pocket and looked at it again in the light from the bare bulb above the door. The image was her. Taken from across the street, she guessed, based on the angle and the way the crowd moved around her, the blur of motion that suggested a busy block. A weekday midday light. She was in her regular clothes carrying a bag of groceries. She was not looking at the camera. She was looking at something off to the left, and there was the smallest trace of something on her face that might have been a smile. She had not been easy to find. She had been methodical about it. 3 different identities over 5 years, 2 states before Illinois, a credit history built from scratch with the kind of patience that most people do not have, and that she had developed out of absolute necessity. She had given up every contact from her former life. Every person she had known who knew what she was. She had walked away clean and deliberate and completely, and she had rebuilt herself from the ground up as someone unremarkable. And someone had still found her. In a grocery store photograph, looking at something on the left, with a bag of produce and a near smile she had not even known she was wearing. The door to the stairwell opened from above. Webb came down the stairs. He stopped when he saw her. "Patrice told you," Anna said. "Patrice texted me 3 words," he said. "Third floor stairwell. That's it." He sat down on the step beside her uninvited, which was either very brave or very stupid, and Anna had not yet decided which. He looked at the photograph in her hands and then away from it, respecting the thing he had seen without asking about it. "You should go home, Marcus." "Probably," he said. He did not move. They sat in silence for a moment that stretched long enough to mean something. "You want to know," Anna said. "I want to understand what happened to the he said. "That's different." "Is it?" "I watched you perform what I can only describe as field surgery in a hospital trauma bay with a gun in the room," he said, not as an accusation, just as a statement of what he had witnessed. "I have done 2 surgical rotations and a trauma fellowship. What you did in there, the speed, the decisions, the sequence, that's not a skill set you pick up floating between hospital departments." He paused. "And that man, Kalen, or whatever his name is, he looked at you like he owed you his life." "He does," Anna said, "in a very literal sense. Different circumstances." Webb turned to look at her. This was the first time she had confirmed anything, and both of them knew it. She folded the photograph again. She was quiet for long enough that Webb started to think that was all she was going to say. Then she said, "I was a combat surgeon attached to a Delta Force unit for 6 years. The last mission I worked was in Kandahar in 2019. After that mission, I separated from the service, and I created a new life, and I spent 3 years making myself as invisible as a person can get without disappearing entirely." She stopped. Apparently that wasn't invisible enough. Webb processed this. She could see him doing it not with disbelief, but with the methodical recalibration of someone adjusting a mental model in real time. "Why?" he said. "Why did I leave? Why did you need to be invisible? What happened in Kandahar?" Anna stood up. She put the photograph back in her pocket. "There are things from that mission that certain people would prefer stayed classified. And there are things that I know that certain people would prefer I did not know." She looked at him evenly. "That's as much as I'm going to tell you, because the less you know right now, the safer you are." "I don't care about safe," Webb said. "I know you don't," she said. "That's why I'm telling you to go home anyway." She pushed open the stairwell door and went back into the hospital, and she did not look back because looking back had never done her any good, and tonight especially, she could not afford the habit. The man she had saved, the operative, the one they had brought in bleeding and unconscious, had been moved to a private room on the 4th floor. She knew this because Danny had texted her the room number with no explanation and no commentary, just the 4 digits, and Anna had understood immediately that Danny was giving her information she thought Anna might need before someone else decided she no longer had access to it. She took the elevator. She was still in her scrubs. She still had her hospital badge on, and hospital badges in hospital corridors are the most powerful form of invisibility. They tell everyone who sees them that you belong, that your presence requires no explanation, that you are simply doing a job that no one wants to think too hard about. The room was guarded. 2 men, neither of them in uniform, standing on either side of the door, with the posture of people who had been told to look like they were not guarding anything and were doing a mediocre job of it. Anna walked up to them. The closer one put out a hand. "Rooms restricted access." "I treated that patient this afternoon," Anna said. "I need to check his post-op vitals. We have medical staff cleared for this room already. And you have a patient in a post-surgical state who I performed a stabilizing procedure on, which means I know exactly what I'm monitoring for, and the cleared staff you have does not." She looked at him without challenge, without aggression, just the flat, certain patience of someone who is not going to leave. His sats drop to 92 or below. He goes into septic shock. I would like to check on that before it becomes a different conversation. The two men looked at each other. One of them took out a phone. He typed something. He waited. 30 seconds. He looked at Anna and stepped aside. The room was dim. The monitor above the bed beeped with the rhythm of a man who was alive against the odds, which was the only kind of alive that Anna had ever found worth counting. The man's name she would later learn was Holt. She did not know that now. What she knew now was that he was mid-40s, that his color was better than it had been 3 hours ago, that his breathing had the depth it was supposed to have, and that at some point between the trauma bay and this room, someone had combed his hair, which struck her as both absurd and oddly human. She checked the monitor readings. She checked the IV line. She lifted the dressing at the surgical site and looked at it with the attention she would give to anything she had put her hands inside of the particular proprietary concern of the person who had done the work. She was replacing the dressing when Holt opened his eyes. He did not startle. He came awake the way people with certain kinds of training come awake fully immediately, with both eyes open and every sense already running before he moved a single muscle. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the IV. He looked at Anna. "You're the one who kept me breathing," he said. His voice was rough but steady. "Yes," Anna said. "She secured the dressing. Kaylin said you wouldn't do it." She looked at him. Kaylin was wrong. Kaylin's wrong about a lot of things. He shifted slightly, winced, stopped. "He found you, though. I'll give him that." He looked at her with a directness that had nothing aggressive in it. "He said it took 8 months. Then he's efficient," Anna said. "He said you'd say something like that." A pause. "He also said you'd come check on me before morning because you don't leave things unfinished." Anna was quiet. "He was right about that one," Holt said. She picked up the chart clipped to the end of the bed and made a notation. "You're stable. You'll have pain for 3 to 4 weeks and a scar for the rest of your life. The scar is non-negotiable. The pain I can help with." "I've had worse scars," he said. "I know," she said without thinking, and then both of them registered that she had said it, that she had known just by looking at him that this was not his first time being put back together, and neither of them said anything about it. "They're coming tonight," Holt said. His voice dropped. Not a warning exactly the tone of someone delivering information as a professional courtesy. "Not Kaylin's people, the other side." Anna set down the chart. "How do you know that?" she said. "Because I was carrying something when they brought me in," he said. "And in my jacket, inner pocket, it's not there anymore." She said, "Your jacket was bagged with your personal effects." "I know. So does whoever has been in this room since I arrived." Anna looked at the door. The guards outside, the cleared medical staff, the men in suits who had asked questions and written things in a notepad and thanked her and left. "What were you carrying?" she said quietly. "A drive," he said. 16 gigabytes, everything they've spent 3 years trying to bury. He watched her face. Everything about Kandahar. The monitor beeped. Outside the window, the city moved on without knowing. Anna said, "The men guarding your door." "Not mine," Holt said. She looked at him. "They were here when I woke up an hour ago," he said. "I've never seen either of them before in my life. And I know most of the people who would be assigned to a situation like this." The door opened. One of the guards leaned in. "Everything good in here?" "His pressure's stable," Anna said without turning around. "I'll be out in 2 minutes." The door closed. She turned back to Holt, and she did something she had not done once in 3 years of being Anna Smith. She stopped managing her expression. She let him see what was behind it, not fear, not panic, but the face of a person who has just confirmed what they suspected and is now moving from assessment to action, which is a very different gear. "Can you walk?" she said. "Not well," he said. "Not well is enough," she said. "But not yet. I need 20 minutes." "What happens in 20 minutes?" "I find out how much trouble we're actually in," she said. She picked up her badge and her chart, and she walked to the door and she opened it, and she went back into the corridor, and she smiled at the guard on the left, and she said, "He's resting well." And she walked to the elevator and pressed the button and waited for the doors to open. And while she waited, she was already doing what she had always done best, which was constructing in her head out of the available information and the available people and the available exits a plan. The drive was the key. If someone had taken it from Holt's jacket, they knew what was on it. If they knew what was on it, then they knew why it could not be allowed to reach anyone with the authority to act on it. If they knew that, then the man in the hospital bed upstairs was a loose end, and she was a loose end, and the photograph in her pocket with 4 words written on it was proof that someone had already decided she needed to be managed before she became a problem. She had been a problem before. She had at various points in her professional life been the kind of problem that required a significant investment of resources and very specific expertise to solve. She had survived it every time, not because she was lucky, but because she was faster at thinking through the geometry of a situation than the people who constructed it. She stepped off the elevator on the 2nd floor. She took the back corridor to the supply wing. She pushed open the door to the small staff room at the end of the hall, where the night nursing staff took their 10-minute breaks at 2 in the morning, and where the coffee was always burnt and nobody ever came unless they worked nights and needed caffeine badly enough to accept burnt coffee. Danny was sitting at the table with 2 cups of coffee. She looked up. "I was starting to think you weren't coming," she said. "You knew I was coming," Anna said. "I guess," Danny said. "I've been watching how you move all day. When you need to think, you find a room that nobody else wants to be in." She pushed the 2nd cup across the table. "The guards on 4. Who are they?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Anna said. She sat down. She did not pick up the coffee. "What do you know about the 2 men who came after the FBI? The ones who didn't say what agency they were with?" Danny was quiet for a moment. "I know that one of them spent 10 minutes in the trauma bay after you left," she said. "Alone." She looked at Anna steadily. "I know this because I came back for a chart I left and I saw him through the window. He wasn't looking at the medical equipment." "What was he looking at?" "The jacket," Danny said. "Holt's jacket. The one in the personal effects bag." Anna set her hand flat on the table. "The drive is gone," she said. It was not a question. "I don't know what was in the jacket," Danny said. "I can tell you the bag was resealed when the orderly cataloged it, which means if something was removed, it was removed and replaced carefully, which means whoever took it came prepared." The coffee sat between them, getting cold. "Danny," Anna said, "I need to ask you something and I need you to answer it honestly, not the way you think I want you to answer it." "Okay," Danny said. "How much do you trust the security team in this building right now?" Danny looked at her for a long moment. 12 hours ago, I would have said a lot," she said. "Right now," she wrapped both hands around her coffee cup, "I don't know who walked into this hospital today and I don't know who was already in it." "That," Anna said, "is the right answer." She stood up. She was already 3 moves ahead in the geometry of it, the drive, the guards, the suits, the photograph Holt in a room on the 4th floor that was not as protected as it looked. The one thing she needed, the one thing that could move this from reactive to operational, was information. Specifically, the kind of information that lived in a classified file with a real name on it that someone in this building or adjacent to this building had already started pulling. She had spent 3 years being Anna Smith. She thought for the first time in 3 years like Spectre. She looked at Danny. "Get me a phone that isn't connected to the hospital network," she said. "A personal cell, yours or someone on the night staff who won't ask questions." Danny reached into her pocket without hesitating and put her phone on the table. "The passcode is my daughter's birthday," she said. 092614. Anna looked at the phone. She looked at Danny. "You don't know who I'm calling." "No," Danny said, "I don't. It's possible that after tonight, the fact that you gave me this phone will be part of a conversation you have with people you would very much prefer not to have a conversation with." "I know," Danny said. "Why?" Anna said. Danny picked up her coffee. She was quiet for a beat. "Because you spent 6 years doing a job that most people couldn't survive, and somebody is trying to punish you for it," she said. "And I've been an ER nurse long enough to know that the people who get punished for doing the right thing don't get to ask for help very often because they're too used to handling everything themselves." She met Anna's eyes. "So I'm going to help whether you ask for it or not." Anna picked up the phone. She dialed a number from memory, 11 digits a sequence she had not used in 3 years, a number she had told herself she would never dial again. She turned away from Danny and faced the wall and listened to it ring. It rang 4 times. 5. 6. On the 7th ring, someone picked up. The line was silent for 3 seconds. Then a voice said, "I was wondering when you'd call." Anna closed her eyes just for a moment. "How bad is it?" she said. The voice on the other end, low, careful. The voice of someone who had been doing this specific kind of work for a very long time said, "They found the files, Anna, all of them. Everything from Kandahar. A pause, Birmawan, and they're not trying to contain it anymore. They're trying to eliminate it. She opened her eyes. They sent men to a civilian hospital, she said. That was the first move, the voice said. It won't be the last. She looked at the wall in front of her. She thought about the photograph in her pocket. The grocery store, the near smile. 3 years of groceries and charts and cold break room coffee and the deliberate constructed smallness of a life that asked nothing of anyone and required no explanation and left no trace. I need to know who authorized it, she said. That, the voice said, is going to take me a few hours. I don't have a few hours, Anna said. I know, I'm already working. Another pause. Anna, the operative they brought in. Holt. He's stable, she said. He reached out to me 6 weeks ago, the voice said. He had something, a drive. He was trying to get it to... It's gone, Anna said. Someone took it from his jacket while he was in surgery. The silence on the other end of the line had its own weight. Then we're past the warning stage, the voice said. They're not trying to scare you out of anything. They're cleaning house. A long pause. You need to move tonight. I have patience, she said. Anna, I have people in this building, she said, and her voice was very quiet and very certain, who are in danger because of me. I am not leaving until I know they're safe. The voice was silent for a moment. Then it said, that is either the most admirable thing I've ever heard you say or the most dangerous. Both, Anna said, probably both. She ended the call. She stood holding the phone facing the wall and she took the breath that you take when you have just made the decision that closes one door permanently and opens something else that you cannot fully see yet. Then she turned around. Danny was watching her. The coffee was cold. The break room light hummed above them. I need you to do something, Anna said. It's going to sound very specific and possibly alarming. Tell me, Danny said. I need you to move every non-critical patient from the fourth floor rooms adjacent to room 417, Anna said. Use whatever reason you need to use, maintenance issue, water pressure, anything. I need it done quietly and in the next 15 minutes. Danny stared at her. Okay, she said. She stood up. Okay. She left the break room with her coffee cup still on the table, already reaching for her pager, already constructing the cover story with the particular creative efficiency of an ER nurse who had spent 6 years finding solutions to problems that textbooks had not covered. Anna looked at the phone in her hand. She thought about what the voice had said. They're cleaning house. She put the phone in her pocket next to the photograph. The man in the grocery store image, the one taking the picture, had been 10 years old when she signed her enlistment papers. She did not know who he was. She did not know who had sent him. But she knew the sequence the photograph arrived in Holt's possession. Holt was shot, and Holt was brought to her hospital, and the drive that was supposed to expose everything had been taken in the 20 minutes between her surgery and the moment he woke up to find it gone, which meant the sequence was deliberate, which meant she had been meant to find out exactly what she had found out exactly when she had found it out. She had spent 3 years being the person who faded into the background. Tonight, someone had decided they needed her to step forward. The question she was not yet finished answering was whose side that someone was on. The 15 minutes Danny needed turned into 11. Anna knew this because she was counting the way she had always counted in situations where time was the variable that mattered most, not by watching a clock, but by tracking the rhythm of things, the pace of movement in a building she had spent 11 months learning from the inside out. She heard the soft friction of gurneys being rolled, the low explanations being offered to patients who were confused and mildly irritated, the particular tone nurses used when they needed compliance without alarm. Danny was good. She was very good. Anna filed that away. She used the 11 minutes. She went back to the 4th floor, not by the elevator, but by the east stairwell, and she stopped 1 floor below and listened. The hospital at night had its own sound, a lower register than the day, fewer voices, longer silences between the beeps and the announcements. But underneath all of that, the building breathed, and she had learned its breathing, and tonight it sounded different. There was a tension in it, a held quality, like the moment before something shifts. She went up the last flight and pushed open the stairwell door, just far enough to see the corridor. The 2 guards were still at the door to Holt's room, but there was a third person now. A woman standing between them, speaking to them in a low voice with her back to the stairwell door. She had the posture of someone issuing instructions, not asking questions. She was in plain clothes, dark jacket, and she had her hair pulled back, and even from behind, Anna could read authority in the exact angle of her shoulders. Anna let the door close again without making a sound. She stood in the stairwell and did the math. A third person arriving at Holt's room within 2 hours of the drive going missing was either a coincidence or a consequence. She did not believe in coincidences, not in situations with this particular geometry. She went back down 2 flights and took the corridor to the supply wing and picked up the internal phone at the nursing station. She dialed Danny's extension. Danny picked up on the second ring. "I'm moving the last one now," she said without preamble. "There's a third person on 4, Anna said. Woman, dark jacket, she arrived in the last 10 minutes. I need you to run her badge number through the hospital check-in system. Every visitor to the 4th floor since 8 p.m. That's going to require logging into the security interface," Danny said. "I know." A pause. "Give me 4 minutes." Anna put down the phone. She stood in the empty corridor and listened to the building breathe and thought about the voice on the phone, the one that had said they're cleaning house, and about what that meant for the specific collection of people in this building who had in the course of a single afternoon become associated with her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Danny, not a number, a name. Sandra Voss. No hospital affiliation listed. Visitor badge issued at 9:47 p.m. Signed in under the authority of the hospital's external liaison office. Anna read the name twice. Sandra Voss. She knew that name. She knew it the way you know a name that you were warned about once in a briefing in a building with no windows. The name said with the particular economy of someone identifying a threat that does not require elaboration. She had never met the woman. She had never needed to. But she knew what Sandra Voss was, what agency she ran under, what her particular role in the architecture of the Kandahar cleanup had been. She put the phone in her pocket and walked back to the stairwell and went up. She did not go to the 4th floor. She went to the 5th, and she took the connecting corridor to the administrative wing, and she stopped at the office of Dr. Gerald Marsh, the hospital's chief of medicine, a man she had spoken to exactly twice in 11 months, both times in passing, but whose office she had noted when she first came to this building, because she noted all offices with authority attached to them. The door was unlocked. Night shift skeleton administrative staff. She went inside and sat at the desk and picked up the internal landline and dialed a number that was not in the hospital system. It rang once. "You move fast," the voice said. "Someone named Sandra Voss just signed into this building," Anna said. The silence that followed lasted almost 4 seconds, which for the voice on the other end was the equivalent of a very loud reaction. "Get Holt out," the voice said. Tell me why Voss is here first." "Because the drive wasn't the only copy," the voice said. Holt had a backup protocol. If the drive was taken, a secondary set of files was set to transfer automatically to a secure server. "Voss knows this. She's not here for the drive anymore." A pause that had weight in it. "She's here to ensure Holt doesn't live to confirm what's on it." Anna stood up. "How long do I have?" she said. "If she's already in the building and she knows his room number, 20 minutes. Maybe less." She ended the call. She moved back into the corridor. She was already running the building in her head. 4th floor room 417. 2 guards who were not Holt's people. 1 woman who was there to finish what the bullet had started. Holt, who had said he couldn't walk well. The elevator, the stairwells, every exit she had memorized in 11 months of floating between departments with nothing to anchor her except the habit of knowing how to leave. She pushed open the stairwell door and went down 1 floor and into the corridor, and she walked to Holt's room at the pace of someone making rounds, badge visible, expression neutral. The guard on the left put out his hand. "Access is restricted." "I know," Anna said. "I need 30 seconds with the patient for a medication check. The attending asked me to verify his anticoagulant dosage before the 3 a.m. administration." She held up the chart she had picked up from the nurse's station on the way past. 30 seconds. The guard looked at her badge. He looked at the chart. He looked at the other guard. She said, "If his dosage is wrong and he bleeds out in his sleep, that's a liability question that goes above my pay grade and yours. So I'd like to do my job, please." The guard on the right said 30 seconds. She went in. Holt was awake. He had been awake the whole time. She suspected the same of full immediate wakefulness as before, waiting for the next thing to happen with the particular patience of a man who had spent a great deal of his life waiting for the next thing to happen. She crossed to the bed and picked up the chart hanging at the foot of it and spoke at normal volume. "I need to check your medication chart, Mr. Holt." Then lower without looking up from the chart. "Sandra Voss is in this building. She's coming for you. We have about 15 minutes. Holt's face did not change. His eyes did. "Can you walk?" she said again, the same question as before. "Better than I told you earlier," he said. "You lied about that." "I lie about a lot of things until I know who I'm talking to," he said. "I know who I'm talking to now." She set down the chart. She looked at the IV line and made a decision. "I'm going to disconnect your line. You're going to need to manage the pain." "I've managed worse," he said. She disconnected the IV with the quiet efficiency of someone who has done it 1,000 times, capped the line and secured the cannula in his hand. She looked at the monitor, reached up and adjusted the alarm threshold. Without disabling it, she wanted it to keep reading, not to alert the nurse's station that it had gone dark. She turned to him. "When I open that door, I'm going to speak loudly about your chart and your next scheduled assessment. You're going to stand up and you're going to walk to the door on your own, and you're going to look like a man who is going to the bathroom, which is a thing patients do at night, and which no one finds remarkable. And the guards, let me handle the guards," she said. "Spectre," he said, and something in the way he said it, not as a call sign, not the way Kalen had said it with recognition, but with a specific quality of trust, made her stop. Voss didn't come alone. "I know," she said. "She has 2 more outside the building," he said, "at the ambulance bay and at the east entrance. She always runs in 3s. She learned it from the same people who trained you." Anna looked at him. "The west stairwell connects to the loading dock," she said. "I know this hospital," Holt said. "I've known it since before you got here." She absorbed that, another thing that had been arranged before she knew she was part of the arrangement. She chose to address it later. "West stairwell, loading dock. Can you make that watch me?" he said. She opened the door. "His stats are stable," she said to the guard on the left, loudly, clearly. "I'll come back for the 3 a.m. check. He's asked to use the bathroom. He should be mobile at this point. It's good for the recovery." The guard on the left looked at Holt, who was on his feet, moving with a deliberate steadiness that cost him something she could see in the set of his jaw, but that he did not let into his face. "We should accompany," the guard started. "He doesn't need accompaniment to the bathroom," Anna said. "He's a post-surgical patient, not a flight risk." She met the guard's eyes. "Unless you'd like to explain to the attending why you're violating his patient's right to basic dignity." The guard stepped back. Holt moved past them. Anna fell in a step beside him, one hand at his elbow. Not holding, just present, the way you walk with someone who doesn't want help but might need it. They went to the end of the corridor, past the nurse's station where the night nurse had her head down in a chart, past the room where Danny had been moving patients, past the door to the public bathroom, around the corner where the corridor branched left toward the west wing. "Now," Anna said quietly. They moved. The west stairwell was 2 fire doors and a turn away. Holt moved better than she expected, not fast but steady, with the grinding focus of a man telling his body what it was going to do, whether it agreed or not. She had seen that face before. She had worn it before. She pushed open the first fire door and held it. Behind them at the far end of the corridor, a door opened. She did not turn around. She let the fire door close and moved to the second one. From behind them, a voice said, "Mr. Holt." It was a woman's voice, measured, polite in the way that certain kinds of threat choose politeness as their first instrument. "I just need a moment of your time." Holt was at the stairwell door. Anna pushed it open. He went through. She turned. Sandra Voss was standing at the far end of the corridor, 20 feet away. She was exactly what her name had always suggested, composed, unremarkable in appearance, with the kind of face that a description would struggle to pin down. She was looking at Anna with an expression that was not anger and was not surprise. It was the expression of someone recalculating. "Anna Smith," Voss said. "That's my name," Anna said. "We should talk," Voss said. She took a step forward. "I'm not here for what you think I'm here for. You're here because Holt has information that ends careers," Anna said. "Possibly prison terms, possibly more." She did not move from the stairwell door. "Which one of those is keeping you up at night?" Voss stopped walking. "You don't have the full picture." "Tell me the part I'm missing," Anna said. "Kandahar wasn't what the files say it was," Voss said. She said it carefully, the way you say a thing that you know will land hard and you want to control the landing. You were used, Anna. The mission you ran, the people you saved, they were part of a cleanup, not a rescue. You were given false intelligence and you performed your job perfectly and you saved people who were not supposed to be saved. And when the people above me realized what had happened, they decided the most efficient solution was to ensure that no one with direct knowledge of that mission remained in a position to speak about it. The stairwell door was against Anna's back. You're telling me this, Anna said, while two of your people are covering the exits downstairs. I'm telling you this, Voss said, because I'm the one who put your photograph in Holt's hands 6 weeks ago. The corridor was very quiet. You sent Kalen, Anna said. I sent Kalen to find you before the other side did, Voss said. Holt came to me. He had the drive. I had your location. Bringing Holt to your hospital was not a threat, Anna. It was the only way I could think of to get you back in play before they decided you were a liability that needed to be resolved rather than a resource. Anna said nothing for a moment. She was running the geometry again. Voss at 20 feet stairwell, door behind her. Holt one flight down, and a story that was just plausible enough to be a very good lie or a very complicated truth. In her experience, those two things were often structurally identical. The men guarding Holt's room, she said. Yours? Yes, Voss said, placed there to keep him safe until I arrived. And the drive? Voss's jaw tightened. Taken by someone inside this hospital who is not affiliated with me or with Holt, which is a problem I did not anticipate, and which is why we are having this conversation in a hospital corridor at 11 at night instead of somewhere with better furniture. Anna looked at her. Someone inside this hospital, she said slowly. Someone who was in place before today, Voss said. Someone who knew you were here before Kalen found you, which means there is a third party in this, Anna, and they have the drive and they have an interest in what's on it that is not the same as mine or yours or Holt's. The stairwell door pushed against Anna's back from the other side. She stepped aside and it opened and Holt came back through it. He looked at Voss. He looked at Anna. He read the room in 1 second flat. She's telling the truth, he said to Anna. You know her, Anna said. She's the one who kept me alive long enough to be shot, he said. It came out with a dry edge that was not quite humor and was not quite bitterness. It's complicated. Voss looked at Holt. The drive is gone. I know, he said, but the drive wasn't the point. He looked at Anna and something shifted in his face, the operational composure dropping for just a moment, just long enough to show something real underneath it. There's a second protocol, not a digital backup. A witness, someone who was in Kandahar who can corroborate everything on that drive from primary experience. Anna went very still. Holt said, someone who performed surgery on 2 operatives under enemy fire in a burning vehicle in March of 2019 and who documented everything she saw before, during, and after that mission in a private encrypted record that she doesn't know we know about. The fluorescent light above the corridor hummed. You're talking about me, Anna said. I'm talking about you, Holt said. The record you kept, the surgical log, the mission notes, they're encrypted on a personal server you set up in 2018. We couldn't access them. We couldn't break the encryption. But we know they exist, and we know what they contain, and we know that your testimony combined with what was on that drive would be enough to bring a full congressional inquiry. He paused. Which is why you're not just a liability to them. You're the case. The building breathed around them. Webb's voice came from behind her. Okay, he said. I've been standing in this corridor for approximately the last 3 minutes, and I have heard approximately enough to understand that I should not be here, and also enough to understand that I am not leaving. Anna turned. Webb was standing at the corridor junction in his street clothes with the expression of a man who has made a decision and is living with it in real time. He had his hospital badge in his hand, which meant he had come through the main building entrance and not the parking structure, which meant he had come back in. I told you to go home, Anna said. You did, he said. I went to my car. I sat in it for 40 minutes. And then I thought about a woman who walked into a hostage situation this afternoon and operated on a man with a gun in the room. And I thought about the way she looked when she told me things were going to get dangerous, and I decided. He stopped. He looked at Voss, then at Holt, then back at Anna. I decided I didn't want to be the person who drove away. Voss was watching this exchange with the focused attention of someone assessing a variable. Who is he? She said to Anna. The attending physician, Anna said. He has nothing to do with this. He's here, Voss said. He's here because he's stubborn, Anna said. And she looked at Webb with something that was harder to name than gratitude and more complicated than frustration. Marcus, the person who took the drive, is still in this building. Webb said, how do you know? Because the exits have been covered since 9:47, Voss said. No one has gone out with anything since my team arrived, which means the drive is here, which means whoever took it is waiting for the coverage to lift before they try to move it. Or they already copied it and sent it somewhere, Holt said. If they had already copied it, they wouldn't still be here, Voss said. She said it with certainty. The drive is hardware encrypted. It requires a physical decryption key to access. The key is not on the drive. The key is somewhere else. Anna looked at her. Where Voss reached into her jacket, she removed a small object, a flat matte black device, roughly the size of a USB drive, but thicker with a single port on one end. She held it up. Here, she said, which means whoever has the drive needs this to read it. And they know I have it, and they know I'm in this building. She put it back in her pocket, which makes me a target as of approximately the last 20 minutes. Webb said quietly, so we're all targets. Welcome to the situation, Holt said. Anna looked at Voss. She looked at Holt. She looked at Webb, who was standing in a hospital corridor in his street clothes at 11 o'clock at night because he had sat in a parking structure and decided he was not the kind of person who drove away, which was, she thought, either going to save his life or cost it, and she did not yet know which. The person who took the drive, she said. They had access to this hospital before today. They had access to a personal effects bag in a trauma bay in the first 30 minutes after you arrived. She looked at Holt. That's a very specific window. It means they were either already in the building or they came in behind your group in the confusion. Or, Voss said, they were already on staff. The words sat in the air between all of them. Webb said, you're saying one of the hospital staff took it. I'm saying it's the most likely explanation for how quickly it happened and how clean the execution was, Voss said. Someone who knew the building, knew the procedures, knew where the personal effects bags go after intake, knew how to reseal a bag so it looked untouched. Anna thought about the trauma bay. She thought about everyone who had been in it. Webb, Danny, 3 orderlies, the night staff on rotation. She thought about the way the room had moved the controlled chaos of a field surgery in a civilian space, the number of hands and the number of moments when no one could have been watching everyone. She thought about the one person who had access to everything in that room, who had moved through it with complete authority, who had been there at the right moment, and who had left before anyone thought to wonder about the gap. She went cold. Not fear, not panic. The specific cold of a realized mistake, the kind where you see in retrospect the thing that was visible the whole time and that you missed because you were looking at everything else. Marcus, she said, her voice was very quiet, the orderly who cataloged Holt's personal effects, the one who signed off on the bag. Do you remember who that was? Webb thought. I signed the chart. The orderly who did the intake was... He stopped. He looked at her. It was the new one. He's been here about 3 weeks. Thin guy, quiet. I don't think I've spoken to him more than twice. What's his name? I'd have to check the chart. Check the chart, Anna said. Webb pulled out his phone and opened the hospital app and started typing. His face changed while he was reading. The name on the intake form, he said slowly, is James Carver. He looked up, but I'm looking at the staff directory right now, and James Carver has been an orderly at this hospital for 18 months, not 3 weeks. Someone used his credentials, Voss said. Someone who was in this building as a different person for 3 weeks without anyone questioning it, Anna said. Holt said, then they were placed here before today, before Kalen ever found you, before any of this was set in motion. He looked at Anna. They were here because they knew this was where it was going to happen. The corridor went very quiet. Anna said, they've been waiting here for 3 weeks. They knew Holt was coming. They knew the drive was coming. They knew... She stopped. She looked at Voss. You said you put my photograph in Holt's hand 6 weeks ago, she said. Yes, Voss said. 6 weeks ago, Anna said, is when someone started watching me in a grocery store. The color shifted in Voss's face. Not guilt. Something more complicated than guilt. The face of someone who has just understood the full shape of something they thought they had under control. The third party, Anna said, they weren't following Holt. They were following you, and when you found me, they found me too. Voss put her hand against the wall. It was a small gesture, brief, barely noticeable. But it was the first crack in the composure, and everyone in the corridor saw it. I led them to you, Voss said. Yes, Anna said. A beat? 2 beats? Then Holt said, the person in this building, the one who's been here 3 weeks. They don't know we've made them. They think they still have time to wait out the surveillance. That's an advantage, Webb said. He said it with the particular careful tone of someone who is new to this kind of thinking and is very aware of that fact, but is leaning into it anyway. It's the only one we have right now, Anna said. She looked at all 3 of them. Voss with her hand against the wall, Holt with his jaw set against the pain he was managing, Webb with his hospital badge still in his hand, which means we use it before they figure out we have it. How, Voss said. Anna said, we give them a reason to move tonight. Holt looked at her. Something in his face shifted recognition, and under it, something that might have been respect, and under that the faintest trace of relief. You're going to use the key, he said. I'm going to use the key, she said. That's going to draw them out, Voss said. That's the point, Anna said. Webb said, what do I do? Anna looked at him. She thought about what she had said to Danny, the less you know, the safer you are. She thought about Webb and the parking structure for 40 minutes, making the decision to come back. She thought about the kind of courage that is not loud and not trained and not developed under fire, but that shows up anyway in a hospital corridor at 11 at night because it does not know how to do anything else. Stay close, she said, and do exactly what I tell you. He nodded. She looked down the corridor. She looked at the stairwell door. She looked at the building that she had spent 11 months learning from the inside out, mapping its rhythms and its exits and its blind spots, doing it out of habit. Doing it because you did not stop doing it just because you had left the life that made it necessary. 3 years of trying to be invisible. 3 years of groceries and cold coffee and keeping her eyes on the left side of the street instead of the right. It turned out the life had not left her at all. It had just been waiting the way certain things wait quietly in the background without calling attention to itself until the moment when the doors come open hard and someone says nobody moves. And the only person in the room who knows what to do is the one who has spent 3 years trying to make everyone believe she is no one in particular. She said, let's go. Aimless narrative continuation boaba ngentu vakiting cow part 4. The plan was simple, the way that the most dangerous plans are always simple, clean on the surface with the weight of everything that could go wrong living underneath it where you could not see it until it was already happening. Anna laid it out in 40 seconds, standing in the corridor with Voss and Holt and Webb, speaking quietly and without hesitation the way she had once given orders in a burning vehicle with 2 men bleeding out and a third screaming in a language she only partially understood. The words came from somewhere that 3 years of grocery runs and cold break room coffee had covered over but had not touched. They came out clean and certain and in the right order, and when she was finished, nobody argued. Voss would position herself in the administrative wing on the 3rd floor, visible, deliberately visible badge out, moving through the corridors that had the widest camera coverage. She would hold the decryption key in her jacket pocket, and she would not be subtle about it. She would be exactly what someone who had the key and did not know they were being watched looked like. Holt would go with Webb. Webb's idea offered quietly without drama. I know this building too. I've been in it every day for 2 years. Let me be useful to the records room on the 2nd floor, which had 2 exits and no cameras, which Anna had noted in her 3rd week at the hospital and not thought about again until this moment. And Anna would move through the building the way she had always moved through it, the way that had made her invisible for 11 months, unhurried, purposeful, belonging to every room she entered. The person with the drive was still here. They had not moved because they could not move, not with Voss's people on the exits, not without the decryption key that they needed to make the drive worth anything. They were waiting. They were good at waiting. 3 weeks in a hospital, pretending to be someone else, required a very specific kind of patience, the kind that was trained, not natural. But patience had a limit, and the limit was information. The moment they believed the key was moving, the moment they thought they had a window, they would stop waiting and start acting. Anna was counting on it. She went to the ground floor first. The ER at 11:45 at night was different from the ER at any other hour, slower, but not slow, the particular cadence of a department that never fully sleeps, just shifts into a lower gear. Patrice was at the central station. She looked up when Anna came through the doors, and the look she gave her carried the weight of everything that had happened since 7 in the evening, compressed into a single expression. "I need something from you," Anna said, "and I need you to not ask me why." At this point, Patrice said, "I've stopped asking why and started asking what." "The security camera feeds for the fourth floor corridor," Anna said. "I need someone monitoring them who is not part of the hospital's standard security rotation. Someone who can tell me the moment anyone moves toward the east stairwell from that corridor." Patrice was quiet for one beat. "My nephew is on the security desk tonight," she said. "He's been here 6 months. He's 23 years old and the most trustworthy person I know. Can he keep his mouth shut? He kept his mouth shut when I accidentally backed my car into my brother-in-law's truck at Thanksgiving 3 years ago," Patrice said. "Yes. Tell him to text you the moment he sees movement, anything on the fourth floor east corridor after midnight. And you?" "I'll be where I need to be," Anna said. She moved to the supply room at the end of the ER corridor, the one that nobody used after 9 because it housed the overflow inventory that was only accessed during high-volume days. She went in and stood in the dark for 30 seconds, not because she needed the dark, but because she needed 30 seconds where no one could see her face while she ran through the geometry one more time. Somewhere in this building, a person was sitting with a stolen drive waiting. A person who had been placed here with enough lead time to build a believable identity, access a staff database, learn the building's rhythms. That level of preparation meant resources. It meant someone above them who had been tracking this situation for longer than any of them had realized. The third party that Voss had not known about. The one that had been following Voss's movements when Voss thought she was following Holt's. Anna had made a career out of being underestimated. She had made it through 6 years of Delta Force assignments as the quiet one. The one people forgot was in the room, the one who let everyone else believe they were the most important variable and then used the margin that created to do her actual work. She had learned that visibility was a choice, and that choosing the right moment to become visible was everything. She walked back out of the supply room and down the ER corridor and through the double doors to the main atrium. At 11:53, she called Danny. "Where are you?" she said. "Break room on 2, Danny said. "I couldn't go home. Don't ask me to explain it." "I'm not asking you to go home," Anna said. "I need you to tell me something. The orderly, the one who cataloged Holt's effects. Have you seen him tonight?" A pause, the sound of Danny thinking. "I saw someone who might have been him near the east stairwell about an hour ago," she said. "I didn't think anything of it. He looked like he was making rounds." "Alone?" "Yes." "Did he go up or down?" "Up," Danny said. And then, after a beat, "Anna, he was carrying a bag." "What kind of bag?" "A supply bag, the kind orderlies use for restocking, but it was the end of the shift for supply restocking." She paused again. "I didn't think about it at the time." "What does he look like?" "Medium height, brown hair cut short, maybe 30. He has a scar on his left hand. I noticed it because I notice hands, it's an occupational thing. It looked like a burn scar." Anna filed that. "If you see him again, do not approach him. Text me immediately." "Okay," Danny said. She did not ask why. She had long since stopped asking why. Anna stood in the main atrium and looked up. The building rose around her 4 floors, visible from where she stood, the nurse station lights on each level casting a faint glow over the railing edges. Somewhere above her, Voss was walking corridors with a decryption key in her pocket and a target she was pretending not to know she was wearing. Somewhere above her, Holt was in a records room with Webb, a man in his street clothes, who had come back from a parking structure because he did not know how to drive away. And somewhere in this building, in a supply bag or a locker or a space behind something that would not be checked until morning, a stolen drive was waiting for its window. She took the main stairwell to the 2nd floor and turned left away from the records room toward the staff corridor that ran along the west side of the building. She walked it slowly, reading every door. Storage, linen, equipment maintenance. The biomedical engineering room that was always locked, but whose lock she had noted in her 2nd month at the hospital because it was the only room on this floor with 2 separate deadbolts. She stopped outside the biomedical room. She put her hand flat on the door and held it there for 3 seconds and listened. Nothing from inside. But there was a smell, faint, almost nothing, the kind of thing you would miss if you were not paying attention, which was exactly why most people missed it. Electrical insulation warmed the specific warmth of something that had been running for a while. Equipment in a room that was supposed to be locked and inactive. She stepped back. She went to the storage room 2 doors down and found what she needed. In 40 seconds, a magnetic key card from the override set that maintenance kept on a hook inside the door. The kind of override that building staff were supposed to use for emergency access, and that she had memorized the location of the same week she started working this floor. She went back to the biomedical room. She ran the card. The first deadbolt disengaged. She ran it again on the second and pushed open the door. The man inside turned around fast. He was exactly what Danny had described. Medium height, brown hair, 30 or so, a burn scar on his left hand, and he was standing at a workbench with a laptop open and the stolen drive connected to a device she recognized as a portable decryption station, the kind of hardware that cost more than most people made in a year and that you could not buy anywhere that asked for your real name. For a moment, neither of them moved. Anna registered everything in one intake, the drive in the decryption station, the laptop with a data transfer window open and stuck at 0% because he did not have the key, the supply bag on the floor, and the man's hands both visible, neither reaching for anything yet, which meant he was still deciding how to play it. "You've been here 3 weeks, she said. He said nothing. "The decryption station is custom," she said. "That kind of hardware takes 4 to 6 weeks to procure through the channels that don't ask questions, which means you ordered it before Kalen's people found me. You've known this was coming longer than any of us." She looked at him steadily. "Who sent you?" He looked at her with the specific kind of appraisal that she recognized, the look of a trained person measuring, another trained person calibrating, deciding how much the other one actually knew versus how much they were performing. "The drive is encrypted," he said. His voice was even, American accent, flat Midwestern. "I can't read it without the key." "I know," Anna said, "and you don't have the key." "I know that too," she said. He tilted his head slightly. "Then what exactly is your play here?" "My play," Anna said, "is that you just told me you know about the key, which means you know about Voss, which means whoever sent you briefed you on Voss's role in this, which means your third-party interest has a source inside the same apparatus that Voss works within." She paused. "Which means the people who sent you are not outside this operation. They're part of it." Something shifted in his face. "Not much, just enough." "You're not a contractor," she said. "You're internal. You were sent by someone inside Voss's own structure who doesn't want the Kandahar files to reach an inquiry. Someone who can't stop Voss directly because they don't have the authority, so they sent you to intercept the drive before it could be authenticated." She looked at him. "How am I doing?" He said nothing for 5 seconds. Then he said, "You're better than they said you were." "Who's they?" "The people who spent 3 years trying to decide whether you were a loose end or an asset," he said. He reached up and disconnected the drive from the decryption station, and the motion was careful and deliberate, not aggressive. The motion of someone who is moving to a different position in a negotiation, not starting a fight. "My name is Carver, the real one." "I know there's a real James Carver who works at this hospital," Anna said. "My name is also James Carver," he said. "Different one, there are more of us than you'd think." He held the drive and looked at it, and then looked at her. "I was not sent here to hurt anyone." "You were sent here to intercept evidence of a war crime," Anna said. "I was sent here to ensure a controlled release," he said. "There's a difference." "Explain the difference," she said. He set the drive on a workbench. He put his hands flat on either side of it, a gesture that was almost deliberately non-threatening, like a man showing his cards without being asked to. "The files on that drive don't just implicate the operation in Kandahar," he said. "They implicate 15 people across 4 agencies. If those files go to a congressional inquiry uncontrolled, the inquiry gets managed. It gets buried. The right people get immunity, and the wrong people take the fall. And in 18 months, it's a closed case and nothing changes." He looked at her. "A controlled release means the right files go to the right people in the right sequence, so that the thing can't be managed, so that it sticks." Anna said, and your principals decide what the right sequence is. My principals have been trying to do this correctly for 2 years, he said. Voss is not wrong about what she's trying to do, but she's wrong about how. She wants to go through official channels. Official channels are where this thing goes to die. And the alternative, he said, is you. She looked at him. The surgical log, he said, the encrypted record from 2018 and 2019. Your documentation of the mission, what you were told, what you found, what you did, and why. That's a primary source. That's a first-person account from a decorated officer with a combat surgical record that no one can challenge. Combined with the drive, not in a congressional hearing, not through official channels, but through the right journalists with the right legal backing and the right timing, that is a case that cannot be managed. He met her eyes. That's why they never stopped looking for you, not to silence you, to find out if you'd kept records. And when they found out you had, they sent you here before Voss could get to me first, Anna said. Both sides of this want you, he said, for different reasons and by different methods. But both of them need what you know. He paused. The question is what you want. What you actually want, not what they've each decided you want. The room was very quiet. Anna looked at the drive on the workbench. She thought about the surgical log, the encrypted file she had built between 2018 and 2019, the one she had maintained not because she planned to use it, but because she had trained herself never to let important information exist only in her own head, where it could be lost or distorted or simply forgotten. She had documented everything, the intelligence she had been given, the mission parameters, the people she had been told were combatants who had turned out to be something else entirely. The 2 men she had saved in a burning vehicle because they were human beings who were dying in front of her, and she was a surgeon, and that was what surgeons did regardless of what the mission plan said about what they were supposed to be. She had closed that file in April of 2019 and encrypted it with a 24-character key and moved it to a server that existed under a name she had never told anyone, and she had not opened it since. She had not opened it because opening it meant sitting with what was in it, and she had spent 3 years building a life around not sitting with what was in it. You said both sides want me, she said. Yes, Carver said, and you're telling me your side is the right side. I'm telling you my side is the side that doesn't end with the whole thing buried, he said. What you do with that is your call. The door behind Anna opened. She turned. Voss stood in the doorway. Behind Voss, Holt moving, with the same grinding steadiness as before, jaw set not stopping. And behind Holt Webb, whose expression had moved from careful determination into something harder and more certain, the face of a man who has been running toward something for long enough that the running itself has become a commitment. Voss looked at Carver. Carver looked at Voss. The recognition between them was immediate and layered, not strangers, not exactly colleagues, the look of 2 people who know they occupy adjacent positions in the same structure and have been trying to outmaneuver each other without directly acknowledging that's what they're doing. You're Renner's man, Voss said. Renner thinks what he needs to think, Carver said. Renner has a Senate seat and 3 decades of cover, Voss said. He is not someone whose thoughts are easily managed. That's why I'm not working for Renner, Carver said. I'm working against him, from inside his operation. Which you would know if your intelligence was as current as you think it is. Voss was quiet for a moment. Holt said from behind her, He's telling the truth. He moved into the room past Voss and stopped at the workbench and looked at the drive and then at Carver. He contacted us 14 months ago. We couldn't verify his position enough to trust him. He looked at Anna. We still can't, fully. But you believe him, Anna said. I believe, Holt said carefully, that the option he's describing is the one that doesn't end with everything buried. Webb said from the doorway, and his voice had the particular quality of someone who has been listening to a conversation in a language they've had to learn in real time and has just grasped something important. The surgical log, the one you kept, is it still there, still encrypted? Everyone looked at him. I'm asking, he said, because if the answer is yes, and if what's on that drive is what everyone seems to agree it is, then the decision in this room right now is not tactical. It's not about exits or decryption keys or who sent who. He looked at Anna. It's about whether you want to stop running. The room held the question. Anna looked at the drive on the workbench. She thought about the grocery store photograph, the near smile she had not known she was wearing. She thought about 11 months of float nursing and cold coffee and the deliberate, careful smallness of a life constructed around the single goal of not being found. She thought about the man she had saved on the ER floor that afternoon, and about Danny handing over her phone with her daughter's birthday as the passcode, and about Patrice saying the less you know, the more you don't ask, and about Webb sitting in a parking structure for 40 minutes and deciding to come back in. She thought about March of 2019, the burning vehicle, the two men, the things she had seen that she was not supposed to have seen in the log she had built because she could not allow them to exist only in her head. She picked up the drive from the workbench. She looked at Voss, she looked at Carver, she looked at Holt. I need 24 hours, she said. And I need guarantees, not institutional guarantees, not procedural ones, personal ones. The people in this room making specific commitments about what happens to the people who helped me tonight. Voss said, define the people who helped you. Danny, Anna said. Patrice, Webb, the 23-year-old on the security desk who has been watching camera feeds for the last hour because his aunt asked him to. She held the drive and looked at Voss without blinking. None of them get touched. None of them get questioned, investigated, or approached by anyone from any agency connected to this operation. Their involvement ends tonight and stays ended. Voss said agreed, Carver said agreed, Holt said agreed. Webb said nothing, but his face did something, a brief, unguarded thing. The look of someone who has just been protected by a person they were trying to protect and does not quite know what to do with the reversal. Anna set the drive back on the workbench. She looked at it for one more moment. Then she looked at all of them. I need a laptop, she said, and I need the room. Voss reached into her bag and produced a laptop. She set it on the workbench beside the drive. She looked at Anna for a moment, the look of someone who has been running an operation for a long time and has just watched it reach the resolution. She designed it to reach through methods she did not design and is deciding how she feels about that, and then she turned and walked out. Carver picked up the decryption station and followed her without being asked. Holt stopped at the door. He looked at Anna, the long look of a man who owes his life to the person he is looking at and knows that no words do anything useful with that fact. He nodded once. He left. Webb was the last one. He stood in the doorway and looked at her and said, "You okay?" She sat down at the workbench. She opened the laptop. "I'll be okay," she said. "That's not Marcus," she said. She looked at him. Her voice was the quietest it had been all night. "Thank you for coming back in from the parking structure." He was quiet for a moment. "It would have haunted me," he said simply. "I know," she said. He pulled the door closed behind him. Anna sat alone in the room with the laptop and the drive and the building breathing around her, and the weight of what she was about to do sitting in her chest with the particular heaviness of something that has been carried a long time and is finally being set down. She opened a browser. She navigated to the server, the one that existed under a name she had never told anyone, in a space she had built in 2018, with the patient, methodical care of someone who understood that the most important things needed to be kept somewhere that only one person could find. She typed the 24-character key from memory. The file opened. She looked at the first line. March 4th, 2019. Forward Operating Base Kilo. Mission briefing received. The following were presented as confirmed combatant targets. She read for 6 minutes. She had written it in the clipped, precise language of a medical officer, documenting for the record every word chosen for accuracy rather than effect. She had been a good writer of records. She had always known the exact word. She did not cry. She had processed most of what was in this file a long time ago in the specific fractured way you process things. You cannot look at directly, not all at once, but in pieces at 3 a.m, in the quiet of a break room, in the particular honest dark of a parking structure, when you are sitting in your car trying to decide what kind of person you are going to be. She reached the last entry, April 17th, 2019. Final notation. The mission has been marked classified at a level that prevents standard reporting. I am transferring this record to encrypted private storage. I do not know if anyone will ever read this. I am documenting it because what happened here happened, and what happened here was not what we were told it would be, and someone should know that, even if that someone for now is only me. She closed the file. She looked at the drive. She picked up the decryption key from where Voss had left it on the edge of the workbench when she walked out. She looked at it for 3 seconds. Then she inserted it into the port on the drive and watched the indicator light shift from red to green. The transfer window on the laptop opened. She entered the coordinates that Carver had written on a strip of paper and left under the edge of the laptop the secure server, the legal team standing by the journalist whose name she did not know, but whose work she trusted in the way that you trust. Work that has survived the sustained pressure of people trying to stop it. She hit transfer. The progress bar moved. She sat back and looked at the ceiling and listened to the building breathe and thought about nothing at all, which was its own kind of relief for exactly as long as the transfer took. Then the bar hit 100%. Then the window closed. Then it was done. She stood up. She unplugged the drive. She put it in her pocket. She picked up the laptop and tucked it under her arm. She walked to the door. Outside in the corridor, Webb was sitting on the floor with his back against the wall and his legs stretched out in front of him because there were no chairs in a hospital corridor, and he had apparently decided that sitting on the floor was the correct response to not knowing what else to do. He looked up when she came out. "Done," he said. "Done," she said. He got to his feet. He looked at her at the particular quality of a person who has just come through something that reorganizes them. Not broken, not triumphant, but settled in a new way, the way a building settles after a long time of standing. "What happens now?" he said. "Now," Anna said, "we go check on your patients." She started walking. "I believe you have a chest pain patient in Bay 1 whose chart I still haven't finished." Webb fell into step beside her. "Anna," he said after a moment. "Yeah, for what it's worth," he stopped. "What you did tonight, not the surgery, not the all of it, what you actually did." He shook his head. "It matters." She kept walking. "I know," she said. And for the first time since a group of armed men had come through the ambulance bay doors and everything had come undone and then been rebuilt into something different, she meant it without qualification. The chest pain patient in Bay 1 was named Gerald Hoffman, 71 years old, retired high school principal who had been in the ER since 4 in the afternoon with an anxiety-induced cardiac episode that had been thoroughly assessed, thoroughly documented, and thoroughly overshadowed by everything that had happened in the subsequent 8 hours. He was sitting up in his bed when Anna came through the curtain at 12:47 in the morning, and he looked at her with the expression of a man who has been waiting a long time and is too polite to say so. "I heard some commotion earlier," he said. "There was a situation," Anna said. She picked up his chart and looked at his most recent vitals. Everything where it should be. "It's been handled." "You're the nurse who was in the middle of it," he said. "I could hear people talking in the hall. They were saying things about—" He stopped. He looked at her with the careful courtesy of someone who has decided that whatever he heard is less important than what he can see, which is a woman doing her job at nearly 1 in the morning who looks like she has been through something significant. "Never mind. How am I doing?" "You're doing well," Anna said. "Your heart is fine, Mr. Hoffman. Your body just needed to remind you that it has limits." He nodded slowly. "My wife says the same thing, has for 40 years. He paused. "Is everyone okay? The people who were involved in whatever happened?" Anna set down the chart. She looked at him, this man 71 years old, who in the middle of his own medical situation had found the space to wonder whether other people were all right. She thought about the things that had happened in the last 12 hours and about who had been part of them. About Danny and Patrice and Webb and Holt and Voss and Carver and a 23-year-old on a security desk watching camera feeds because his aunt had asked him to. "Yes," she said. "Everyone is okay." He visibly relaxed. "Good," he said. "That's good." She finished the chart update and pulled the curtain and stood on the other side of it for a moment in the particular quiet of an ER floor at almost 1 in the morning. And she breathed in and she breathed out and she allowed herself just briefly to feel the full weight of what the last 12 hours had been. Then she filed it and moved on, which was what she had always done and which was, she understood now, both her greatest strength and the thing that had cost her more than anything else. The next 72 hours moved with the specific unreality of a period that has too much happening in it to process in real time. It started at 6 in the morning when a man Anna had never seen before appeared at the hospital's administrative entrance with a federal identification that caused the duty administrator to call the hospital director at home. The man's name was Rutherford. He was from an office whose name he offered once and did not repeat. He asked to speak with Anna Smith, and when Anna came to the administrative office and sat across from him, and he opened his briefcase and she saw what was in it, She understood that the transfer had reached the people it was supposed to reach and that the next phase had already begun. Rutherford was not like the men in suits from the night before. He had the manner of someone who was tired in a bone-deep way that suggested he had been trying to make a very heavy thing move in the right direction for a very long time, and that the very heavy thing had just moved. The files were received at 4:17 this morning, he said, authenticated by 6. We have a team of legal analysts who spent 2 hours on them, and their assessment is that we have sufficient foundation for a formal inquiry into the conduct of the Kandahar operation and its subsequent classification. He looked at her steadily. We need your testimony, Miss Smith, on the record, under protection. Who decides what protection looks like, she said. You do, he said, within what we can guarantee, which is more than it's been for anyone involved in this so far. The people who helped me in this building, she said, last night, they're not part of this. They're not named in anything we have, Rutherford said. Their involvement, as we understand it, was in the category of a hospital staff responding to a medical emergency. That's where it stays. She looked at him. She looked at the papers in his briefcase. She thought about the surgical log, every line of it, the precise and honest documentation of a person who had known, even in the middle of something terrible, that the truth had a right to exist in some form somewhere, even if the only person it was true for at that moment was herself. I'll need a lawyer present, she said. Already arranged, Rutherford said. If you agree to proceed. I agree to proceed, she said. The testimony took 3 sessions across 2 days. She was moved to a location she was asked not to describe, accompanied by a legal advocate whose name was Clara Reyes, and who turned out to be one of the sharper minds Anna had encountered in a life full of sharp minds, and who asked Anna before the first session started whether she was doing this because she wanted to or because she felt she had no other choice. Anna thought about the question seriously, which she could tell was what Clara wanted her to do. Both, she said, in a ratio that has shifted overnight toward wanting to. Clara nodded. Good enough, she said. The sessions themselves were what you would expect, long, exhaustive, structured, occasionally raw, in ways that Anna had not predicted, even knowing what she was going to have to say. She described the mission briefing. She described the intelligence she had been given and what it had said and what the people she had been treating had turned out to actually be. She described the vehicle and the fire and the 2 men and the surgery in the dark. She described what she had understood in the aftermath, not all at once, but in the accumulating way that a person understands something they were not supposed to understand, one piece at a time over weeks, until it became impossible to hold the pieces separately and pretend they didn't make a picture. She described the log, why she had kept it, what was in it, how she had encrypted it and put it somewhere and tried to live the rest of her life as though the act of documenting something was the same as processing it, which it was not, and which she had known was not even at the time. On the second day, midway through the afternoon session, Clara leaned over and said quietly, You should know the names from the drive were filed this morning with the Oversight Committee. 3 of them are already in the process of having their security clearances reviewed. One is being asked to step down from a position he has held for 11 years. Anna received that information and sat with it. Good, she said. The word came out with more weight than she intended, and she did not apologize for the weight. The 3rd session was the shortest. By the end of it, Rutherford's junior colleague, a young woman who had been taking notes for 2 days, with the focused efficiency of someone who believed completely in what she was doing, looked up from her notepad and said, Is there anything else you want on the record that we haven't asked about? Anna thought about it. She thought for almost a full minute. Yes, she said. I wanted on the record that the 2 men I operated on in Kandahar in March of 2019 were not targets. They were people. They had names and histories and reasons for being where they were that had nothing to do with any threat to anyone, and they were alive when I left them, and I want that on the record because someone should say it clearly, and I am the only one in a position to say it clearly, so I am saying it. The young woman wrote it down, every word. She was back at Metropolitan General 4 days after the testimony ended. She came through the main entrance in the morning badge clipped to her scrubs the same way she had come through every morning for 11 months. The ER floor looked exactly as it always looked. The sound of it was the same, the smell of it, the particular texture of organized urgency that she had spent 11 months being a quiet part of. Patrice was at the central station. She looked up when Anna came through the doors and she said without preamble, Without fanfare. Bay 3 has a 68-year-old with a hip fracture who has been waiting for someone competent to assess her pain management protocols since 6:30 this morning. I'm on it, Anna said. Good, Patrice said and went back to her chart. Danny found her between Bay 3 and Bay 5 about 40 minutes later. She had brought 2 cups of coffee, and she handed one to Anna, and they walked the way they had walked before, side by side, voices low, the particular gait of 2 people who have been through something together and are figuring out what the other side of it looks like. I heard it started, Danny said, the inquiry. It started, Anna said. The names are in the news, Danny said. Not all of them yet, but some of them. She paused. People are talking about Kandahar in a way they weren't a week ago. I know, Anna said. How do you feel about that? Anna took a sip of the coffee. It was hot, which was a change. Like something that needed to be said has been said, she said. And like I don't know yet what that means for what comes next. What does come next? Danny asked. I don't know, Anna said. And then because it was true, and because she had decided that the life she wanted on the other side of this was going to be built on saying true things instead of useful ones. And I'm okay with not knowing. For the first time in a long time, I think I'm actually okay with it. Danny nodded. She drank her coffee. They walked. Webb came to find her at lunch. He appeared at the entrance to the break room with his white coat and his stethoscope, and the particular expression of someone who has been thinking about something for 4 days and has arrived at a thing they need to say. I've been offered a position, he said, a research fellowship, trauma surgery, combat-related injury protocol development. He sat down across from her. It came through channels I didn't expect. The offer letter references a need for civilian physicians to develop better interfaces between military combat medicine and civilian trauma practice. Anna set down her sandwich. When did you receive this? She said. This morning, he said, and there's a name attached to the program advisory board. He looked at her. Your name? Anna Smith, listed as a founding consultant. She had not known this. Rutherford had mentioned at the end of the final testimony session that there was interest in formalizing some of what had come out of the inquiry into a training initiative. He had asked briefly and with appropriate vagueness whether she would be open to a consultancy role. She had said she would consider it. She had not said yes. She looked at Webb. She thought about what it meant that her name was already on a document, that someone had moved forward with the assumption that she would agree, and she decided that for once being assumed toward rather than away from was something she did not want to correct. The fellowship, she said, is it something you want? I've been an ER attending for 2 years, he said. I watched you perform surgery in a trauma bay under conditions that my training did not cover, and I spent the next 4 days thinking about the gap between what I know and what you know and what it would mean for patients if that gap were smaller. He met her eyes. Yes, it's something I want. Then take it, she said. He nodded slowly. Will you be, is this something you're actually going to do, the consulting? I think so, she said. I think it's probably the most useful thing I can do with what I know. She paused. It's a different kind of invisible. Teaching is you pour what you know into other people and it moves forward without you. That's a different kind of not being seen. It suits me. He smiled at that. It was a real smile, the kind that doesn't perform itself. You know, he said, in 2 years in this ER, I have never once sat in a break room and had a normal conversation with a colleague because something is always happening and someone always needs something. This is not a normal conversation, Anna said. No, he said, but it's a good one. 3 weeks after the inquiry formally opened, a woman Anna did not know appeared at the hospital asking for her. She was in her mid-60s with gray hair and the posture of someone who had spent years being precise about how she occupied space. Her name was Dr. Louise Fenn. She was the director of a program affiliated with 3 teaching hospitals and a military medical college, and she sat across from Anna in the same administrative office where Rutherford had first appeared. And she said, I've been developing a curriculum for the last 2 years that doesn't quite work, and I believe that's because it's missing the perspective of someone who has practiced surgery in both military and civilian context at the highest level. I want you to help me fix it. Anna said, what does fixing it look like? Like you in a room with a group of surgeons and combat medics twice a month. Dr. Fenn said, telling them what you know from experience that you cannot find in any textbook because the person who could have written that textbook spent 3 years being a float nurse and keeping her head down. It was not said unkindly. It was said the way you say something that is simply true. I'll need to keep my position here, Anna said. Part-time, the ER. I expected that, Dr. Fenn said. It's already in the proposed structure. Why, Anna said? Because the people who designed this program believe that someone doing both clinical practice and teaching is more valuable than someone who has retired entirely from one or the other. She folded her hands on the table. And because, frankly, from what I understand about how you think, I believe you need both. The work keeps you grounded. The teaching gives the work somewhere to go. Anna looked at her for a long moment. You've been briefed on me thoroughly. I have, Dr. Fenn said. I make no apology for it. I'm not asking for an apology, Anna said. I'm just noting that you're not treating me like someone who has been hiding. You haven't been hiding, Dr. Fenn said simply. You've been waiting. There's a difference. The first session of the program happened 6 weeks later in a conference room at a teaching hospital across the city with 12 people in it, 6 civilian trauma surgeons, 3 military combat medics, transitioning to civilian practice, 2 residents in Webb who had taken the fellowship and who sat in the back row with a notebook and the alert attention of someone who intends to absorb every word. Anna stood at the front of the room and looked at the 12 of them and felt something she had not expected to feel, which was the precise absence of the weight she had been carrying for 3 years. Not gone weight like that does not go, but distributed, shifted, the way a burden feels different when you have decided to carry it forward instead of away from. She said, I'm going to start with something that is not in any curriculum and that most formal training programs would consider tangential. I'm going to start with what it actually feels like to make a decision under fire. Not what the protocol says, what it feels like, because the gap between those two things is where people die, and closing that gap is why we're here. The room was very quiet. One of the combat medics, a woman named Torres, early 30s, who had the look of someone who had been in rooms like this before and had rarely found them useful, uncrossed her arms. It was a small thing, but Anna noticed it the way she noticed everything, and she recognized it as the specific body language of a person who has just decided that the thing in front of them might be worth paying attention to. Good, Anna said, and she began. Holt came to see her the following month. He was walking without visible effort, which meant the scar tissue had settled and the body had made its adjustments the way bodies do when the person they belong to gives them no option but to adapt. He came to the hospital on a Tuesday afternoon, and he found her in the ER, and he waited by the entrance with the patience of a man who has spent a great deal of his life waiting for things until she finished with the patient she was seeing and came to meet him. The inquiry has expanded, he said. 3 more names added last week. The oversight committee is taking it seriously in a way that... He stopped. He looked for the right word. In a way that doesn't happen often. I know, she said. I've been following it. The legal team thinks there's enough for criminal referrals, he said, for at least 2 of the principals. She absorbed that. She thought about March of 2019, the fire in the dark, and the 2 men in the surgery, and the log she had kept because she needed to put the truth somewhere that could hold it. Good, she said. For the second time, the word came with weight she did not try to reduce. Holt looked at her. He had the directness of a man who communicates economically and means everything he says without the performance of meaning it. I need to ask you something, he said. Ask, she said. Are you all right? She looked at him. She thought about the question not as a formality, which was not how he had asked it, but as a real question about a real state of being. She ran the inventory honestly the way she had always run assessments, without wishful thinking and without catastrophizing, just the accurate reading of what was actually there. Not entirely, she said, not yet, but more than I was. She paused. More than I've been in a long time. He nodded. That's the honest answer, he said. I gave up dishonest answers recently, she said. It turns out they're not as efficient as they seem. Something moved in his face that was close to a smile. Kalen sends his regards, he said. He feels he owes you an apology for the method of contact. He can keep it, Anna said. The method worked. I'll tell him that, Holt said. He'll find it characteristically insufficient. Tell him that too, she said. He left the way he had come, without ceremony, without prolonged farewell, the way people leave when the thing between them has been said, and they trust that it will hold without being reinforced. Anna watched him go and then turned back to the ER floor and picked up the next chart and moved to the next bay. The person in Bay 7 was a woman in her late 50s named Margaret, who had come in with a laceration on her forearm from a cooking accident, and who, as it became immediately apparent, less interested in the laceration than in talking, which Anna recognized and allowed for because she had been in emergency medicine long enough to know that people sometimes come to emergency rooms for reasons adjacent to the stated reason. "My son is in the Army," Margaret said, while Anna cleaned the wound with careful precision. "He's been deployed twice. He's about to go a third time." "How do you feel about that?" Anna said. "Terrified," Margaret said without hesitation. "The same way I've felt both times before, like the world has a very large hole in it until he comes back, and I spend however many months just keeping busy, keeping my hands doing things so my head doesn't go where it wants to go." Anna worked. She was quiet for a moment. "He's good at what he does," she said. "The best," Margaret said. "His commanding officer says—" She stopped. "Well, you know how it is. Mother has always believed that." "Sometimes they're right," Anna said. Margaret looked at her. "Do you have children?" "No," Anna said. "Someone who worries about you the way I worry about him." Anna thought about Patrice, who had said the less you know and meant I am staying. About Danny and her daughter's birthday as a passcode. About Webb sitting on a floor outside a locked room because there were no chairs and he was not leaving. "Yes," she said. "Some people like that." Margaret smiled. "Hold on to them," she said. "I intend to," Anna said. She finished the laceration. She documented it. She gave Margaret discharge instructions and a list of signs to watch for. And she shook her hand at the curtain, and she meant the gesture the way she was only just learning to mean ordinary gestures fully without the management of distance that had been her primary mode of operating for 3 years. The evening shift came on. Patrice handed off to the night charge. Danny was starting her rotation. Webb was somewhere in the building doing something that involved a curriculum draft and 3 highlighters, which Anna knew because he had texted her at 4 in the afternoon asking whether she preferred his summary of the Kandahar wound protocol to lead with mechanism of injury or intervention sequence, and she had responded with intervention sequence without explanation, and he had written back understood and gone quiet, which was exactly the right amount of conversation. She clocked out at 7. She stood at the main entrance for a moment before going through the doors. She could feel the building behind her, its breathing, its rhythms, the particular sound of a place that does the work of keeping people alive every hour of every day without asking to be noticed for it. She had spent 11 months learning that sound. She was going to go on learning it. She pushed open the door and walked out. The evening was cold and clear, the kind of cold that has a specific honesty to it that asks nothing of you except that you acknowledge it. She stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the building she had been walking into and out of for 11 months and 3 weeks, and she thought about all the things she was now: a nurse, a consultant, a witness, a teacher, a person with a surgical log that had finally been read by people with the authority to act on it. She thought about how none of those things had replaced each other, how the float nurse was not a disguise for the Delta Force surgeon, and the Delta Force surgeon was not the truth beneath the float nurse's surface, how both of them were just her. How they had always been just her, and how the 3 years she had spent trying to keep them separate had been, in the end, the most exhausting thing she had ever done, more exhausting than any surgery in any burning vehicle, in any forward operating base in any country that had asked more of her than a person should be able to give. She was 41 years old. She had a position at a hospital she liked, in a teaching role she had not expected to find, and people who had stayed when they had every reasonable reason to leave, in a surgical log that was no longer only for herself. She had a past that she was not running from, in a future that did not require her to be invisible to survive. She put her hands in her pockets. She started walking. And Anna Smith, who was also Spectre, and who was also just a woman who had once saved 2 men in a burning vehicle and written it down because the truth deserved somewhere to live, walked forward into the evening without looking back because she was done looking back. And because the direction that mattered was the one she was already moving in, and because she had finally, after 3 years and 11 months and 4 days of being very quietly someone else, come home to herself,